Okay, welcome back, everybody. Today we will be kind of have a continuation from last show. Today's title is going to be moving forward, preparing for the year ahead. So we'll just be discussing different ways to kind of continue practicing executive functioning as well as just ways to move ahead along this year. So I'm gonna let Frank lead us off, and we'll go from there.
Good evening, everybody. Here in Metro Atlanta, we've had a little bit of snow the past couple of weekends, either snow or ice. And shout out to those people in the Northeast and Midwest we just got some snow. But I was talking to T. Bless, Dre, in the DMV area,
Mm-hmm.
and it hit them pretty rough. A lot of people weren't moving around for a whole week there because they dealt with the snow and then with the freezing temperatures. And even here in Metro Atlanta, there was some snow flurries that I saw when I was out and about this morning. So,
Mm-hmm.
stay safe. Stay safe, folks. Stay safe on the roads and so forth. So we're in February now, and with so many different things going on around the country, I'm finding as I talk to people that although some folks have already set resolutions and some semblance of goals, it seems like folks are off. Maybe they're off because of, I don't know how else to put it, maybe fear surrounding different forces that are swirling, political forces and so forth. And what we wanted to do is just say some things that may help you to zero in on where you need to be. Now this is going to be sort of different, Dre. As I was thinking about today's show, I wanted to address a topic. This is Black History Month, and we'll probably do something specifically around that. And there are forces around the country these days that would suggest that Black history is unnecessary today because all is well. Well, you know, when you talk about the people that were the victims of chattel enslavement and an attempt to erase an entire history, then we're not that we're not that far removed when you consider that Lincoln so-called freed the slaves in the mid 1800s. Well, we're not we're not that far removed. Now we've made a lot of gains, but we definitely still need Black history, not just for Black people, but for all the other people who are in this country as well. Dre, I don't know if you've experienced this as a professional. I have. Sometimes what I've noticed is that Black people, and maybe it's just vestiges of us sort of being forced to try to connect with the ruling ruling party or the ruling group for the most part due to white supremacy. Often you'll see Black people being willing to be a part of, join, organizations, functions, events led by white people.
Mm.
But there's not often the same willingness for white people to join organizations led by Black people. Dr. Martin Luther King famously said that Sunday morning is the most segregated hour in America. That was true in the 60s and is still true today for the most part,
Mm.
because some of the brightest minds, and I'm just using that sector as an example, but we could go across sectors. I watched this really cool piece on Earn Your Leisure, and his name is escaping me right now. NVIDIA named one of their new technologies after a Black mathematician
Mm.
who was in part responsible for AI as we know it today.
Yeah. I
And
had a friend
so,
send me that actually. I hadn't had a chance to look at it though.
what did
I'm looking
if
it
you
up
could pull
now.
that name up real quick, that might be helpful for people. And I'm going somewhere with this.
Mm.
So, this gentleman was one of the top mathematicians in the world in the 1950s.
Dr. Blackwell.
But Blackwell, right, right. What was his first name?
Um, I just
His
saw it.
last name was Blackwell, and
David
they named
Blackwell.
this,
David Blackwell.
yeah, David Blackwell, one of the top mathematicians in the world. But because of his paint job, as my teacher would say, a lot of people didn't want to receive him. And so it took all these years for, and shout out to NVIDIA, even though some people would say that that's just a drop in the bucket, all things considered, but it's better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's better than nothing, in my opinion. And so there, there, Dre, I'm going to say this: there are white people that would benefit from watching this show, who come across this show, and they see our image on the screen, and instead of getting the knowledge, they just keep moving. And I'm going to say that for some of you, the very thing that you need to move forward is coming out of the mouth of somebody with a totally different paid job. And you're stuck because of a mentality that you've been trained to have. Maybe your grandparents, or maybe even your parents, and you need to come out of that.
Mm-hmm.
You're stuck because of racism.
Real quick, that actually that goes both ways. I see because I remember back in school when I first started, really researching. I was just very focused on Black history and Black scholars as well, and then not so much, but I personally it felt like throughout school we had spent so much time focusing on white people who had different ideas and stuff, but as I grew older and started looking for other things, and I mean I found some very interesting white people that had some good knowledge, unbiased knowledge as well, and just showed things that I never probably would have came across if I had strictly stuck to studying from only Black scholars. And I've seen other people my age kind of go the route where they'll just kind of cut off other information just due to the fact that they've have a distrust in the school system that we grew up in, and so they think everything that was taught in school, not necessarily everything taught in school, but they take all of that information with a grain of salt, and then kind of never explore some of even some of the white people that they don't talk about in school. So I just wanted to, as you were talking about that, that was just something that I was thinking about not too long ago. Like you can learn from, I watch Asian professors, I watch Hispanic professors, so there's no discrimination on where the knowledge can come from. You can learn from some from Africa, some from South America. So I just wanted to say that real quick.
Yeah, that is true. And so I think more than anything, don't get boxed in. Don't get mentally boxed in, because It could be that the creator has specifically packaged what you need in somebody with a different paint job, but because you have decided that you allow your prejudice to keep you on the outside looking in, and you don't want to be like one of those foolish virgins that the book talks about. Anyway, I think that as we look at 2026 with as many gyrations, first of all, I want to say to people, don't, it's too early to throw in the towel for the 2026. And you'd be surprised, Dre, that there are people who are so caught up in what's going on. Like, for an example, I hadn't watched the music awards show in many years. I happened to watch it last Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so much controversy about who's who's performing at the Super Bowl and not performing at the Super Bowl. Um, it's important. Now, I will say, and I guess because of We the Source, even though we might not want to dive deep into it, you might have some commentary about that whole thing, about the awards and all that. Um, don't let that take over your entire life. Yes, you should be informed. You should have something to say about it, but to be so enthralled in it that you let it take over your life in a way that you're not getting out of bed, and you can't do that. You can't do that. You do the best you can. You make sure. Now there have been people talking about ways to move, because obviously the people are out and scouting and checking for IDs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing you want to do, you moving around, make sure you have your ID on. Because I know I've had to get on some young people, because my whole life I've dealt with this. People run out, they might even get in their car and run up to the store and they don't have their ID on them, or they forgot. This is not the season for that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This this is this is not the season for that. So, and technically, you should, as a rule, you never know what might jump off. So, if you're gonna leave your compound, have your ID with you. That's for your own protection. Okay, you want to comment on that, Dre?
Yeah, nah, I'm always phone, keys, wallet every time I leave the house. I gotta have those three things on me at all times. So yeah, I think in terms of people giving up early in the year, that kind of happens. Hear some bad news. It all years always start off rough. I had a rough start to 2026 as well. Just dealing with my dog and stuff. Just a whole bunch of things can happen, and you can't really let it's early in the year, so I'd rather take L's early in the year than later in the year. Just the overall, I'm always optimistic. So something happened. If I'm like something happened early in the year, then I'm like I'm bound for just nothing but success for the rest of the year. That's my mentality towards it. So nothing. Yeah, in terms of everything political, and I didn't watch the Grammys. So I haven't watched it in quite some time either. It's not anything that really. It's not really that important to me personally, because I mean, most of the music that I truly enjoy or listen to isn't necessarily acknowledged at the Grammys. I know this year, they had. I know Kendrick had cleaned up and everything, and I like Kendrick. I don't necessarily listen to him as much as I did when I was like younger. And actually, something I was really just thinking about this today is that as I get older, when I'm reaching the ages of some of the rappers that I used to listen to, then it's like, okay, that's not as profound as it was to me when I was a kid. So that's really happening for a lot of rap for me. So even in the sense of when I was growing up and I was listening to like Tupac early on in life, now I'm like, okay, now that I'm older than Tupac ever was, I've listened to, well, I haven't listened to his music in a while, but it's not as, I guess, prophetic for me as it was when I was a kid. Like, there's a lot of things that he says that I wouldn't necessarily listen to, or I wouldn't. He wouldn't be the first person who I would like listen to for a specific subject matter. Um, and yes, but I've seen that happen a lot with just rap in general for me. And since now I'm more listened to hip hop. Like, I listen to it for a lot of the young people who are coming in. Like, I want to hear what the youth is saying. What political things they want to talk about. What social economic things they're mentioning in their music. So to me, that's. But I'm no longer looking to be educated by rappers. I don't necessarily know if I was ever personally looking to be educated, but I appreciated the education that I could get from particular rappers, and that's what made, you know, maybe somebody a little bit higher up on my top five list than somebody else, something like that. So that's kind of where I am with
So
hip hop now.
something you said led me to another question, and tell our audience to hang in there. We're gonna all of this is gonna tie together. I mean, for me, it's already tied together. So you said something that I can relate to because I've had the same kind of experience with a different kind of artist as uh, as my numbers went up age wise. For an example, there were certain comedians
Mm,
that I really liked at one part of my life, and then maybe 10 or 15 years later, I went and watched the same thing that had me howling 20 years earlier. It was like it didn't have the same impact on me.
mm-hmm,
And as you were talking, it led me to a question because people are always debating about who's the GOAT, whether it be rapping, basketball, quarterback, etc. I wonder if the GOAT would be the person who, and I guess the GOAT is subjective totally, right? Uh, would that person be someone who would be able to stand the test of time? Because put that person, like when we think about music
mm-hmm,
and we think about rap, I feel like there's certain rappers. I'm gonna throw a person out for example.
mm-hmm.
I feel like Big Daddy Kane is one of those rappers who has stood the test of time.
Right.
So during his time, he was one of the kings. And now he's someone who I don't, I'm not aware of any new music that he's put out, but he's somebody that when some people in the new generation hear them, they can rock with him. But more importantly, I still consider him as somebody that I'm interested in listening to. Whereas to the point I think you were making, some of the things that rappers who when you were in high school or college, some of the things they were saying then, it doesn't resonate with you in the same way now.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that whole premise around, or do you think when you have the GOAT conversation, it has nothing to do with your personal resonance with the music? It's just how people in general feel about that person as an artist when you talk about the GOAT.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think the GOAT conversation is definitely more, it's definitely subjective, but there's a conversation that happens publicly. So that used to be why, like, even still to this day, like, one of my personal favorite rapper is Absol. But when you talk about that to people who don't really, even people who do listen to hip hop don't even typically know too much about Absol. So it's hard to have that conversation in terms of, like, for me personally, I know why he would be considered my goat in the terms that we're talking about. But you know to argue for him against other people, to argue against him against Kendrick Lamar, who's on the same label. Like, I personally think Absol is a better rapper for the information that was passed on at the time. So, and when I'm saying that, for rap, like, I'm not getting the same thing out of rap, but that is just rap in general. There used to be a lot of information that, things that I wouldn't necessarily, subjects I wouldn't come across in a school textbook, I was coming across in a rap song. Now I have the ability more myself to do my own research. So it used to be, I used to be impressed with a rapper if I, like, could tell that they read a certain book that I read as well, or they put, like, a quote from a book, or a movie that I really liked, and they were showing that they were thinking on of that movie on, like, the same level. That would be some, like, a bar that would resonate with me personally. Other people resonate with artists who are saying something that is, like, very street coded, or they might not be saying something, but somebody who might have been in the street life may be able to relate to a certain bar. So and regardless of how old you get, you can remember back to that time, and think of, be like, okay, I remember when he said that bar, and it, like, really resonated with me. And even songs that I would, like, you don't have to be a street person, and but you can just hear the music, or kind of hear the truth, or in their songs. And there, sometimes those people might only have one big song. Like, thinking of a song that I've been listening to again is Derez Deshawn, Hardaway. And that's a song about selling crack, but he's telling it from, he's like, I didn't know how to sell crack, I was giving that hard away. So, so it was just, the way he was actually rapping it, you was like, okay, you could tell it came from a very real place. He's being honest. He's not necessarily encouraging people. He was like, this was a very difficult path that I took. He's not, to my knowledge, he's not making music anymore, but that song itself can stand, the test of time. When people hear it still, they're like, oh yeah, I know that song, and they could sing along with it. So that's the beauty of music. Like, because even somebody years later, they can hear that song and be like, oh, they could think he's the greatest just from that one song. So it's hard. Everyone has different criteria for what makes you the greatest, or what makes you the best in their eyes. So it's very subjective. And I think really when it comes down to how, like, the Grammys, or how other maybe, like, hip hop publications want to measure or want to try to quantify what makes a good rapper, then that's where things get, like, because they're like, oh well, this person has more commercial success, or this person sold this many records. And to me, I couldn't care less. It's more about how many people are connecting with that song, or with that artist on a continuous basis. So, like, when I think of today, your examples are NBA YoungBoy. You have so many young kids who are connecting with YoungBoy because they've been listening to him for so long that he could put out he puts out multiple music videos a week, and that's really unheard of today. but he has the fan base to where he could continue to churn it out. They don't get tired of it because he's talking on that same frequency that they're on currently. When I was in middle school, early high school, that was Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne was, coming out so consistently, like just kept feeding the streets, even though I'm not in it, just like feeding the youth. So, and that's why a lot of people consider him the GOAT, because he gave you so much music for an important time in your life. And whatever, whether you was just riding the bus, like that's the soundtrack that you was listening to on your way to school, or that was the soundtrack you was listening to when you were practicing and getting ready for a game. So the music different things to different people, and so that's why I don't, I try not to have the who's the greatest conversation. I know the people who I like, have influenced me the most over the years, but I wouldn't necessarily. I know they wouldn't be considered goats by most other people.
So that leads me to probably my top point in tonight's discussion, and that is I want to encourage people. In one of Dr. King's most famous talks, I think it's called the drum major effect. That might be the title, or something like that. He talks about everyone seeking to be their personal best. Sometimes I think the reason why people struggle is they're trying to do something, A, that they're not really best wired for. I don't know if you've ever watched American Idol, and or even if you didn't watch it, you may have seen a clip of somebody that's gone viral. This person has come up in the competition, and this this person has been told by their mom or somebody that they are a singer, but nothing that hits the eardrums of the general populace would suggest that this person is in fact a singer.
Mm-hmm.
And the judges are quick to let this person know that this is not the right platform for that person as a singer. And so my first challenge would be to say, seek to identify that thing that you are supposed to do. Dr. King famously said that if you are a street sweeper or a janitor, be the best possible janitor or street sweeper that you could possibly be. And I wonder if some people, and I think it's a natural human desire to want to succeed and be successful at something. My contention is that some people are not experiencing that thrill, mostly because they've chosen to try to be something that they're really not cut out to be. And I guess one of the questions, because there are people who are watching, like, I don't know. In fact, as someone that helps people identify purpose, a lot of times people will say, I don't know what that thing is. So one of the things you can ask yourself is, okay, what is it that people often come to you for? Because sometimes that's your clue. What what is it that you do that people are always coming to you to get done? Are you the person, maybe you're the negotiator and you don't even realize that that is an actual skill. When something needs to get settled amongst your peers or the family, people always coming to you to help settle beefs. There are people who get paid a lot of money to do that. And that could be a clue to something that you actually could be doing. And some of the frustration that people experience has to do with them being displaced. They ended up doing a particular job because that job is making ends meet, but then they keep doing that job even though they may not like it and they may not be that good at it, but it's making ends meet. And so my challenge is I identify that thing that you might have a God given ability at, or maybe you could tap into experts. You know, one of the biggest experts in the world in this space is Tony Robbins. Okay. One of his claims to fame is helping people to do their thing. And he's just one example. Like I said, I've helped many people in that area also, but it's easier for me to point to somebody like him because you can you can Google him and see the thousands of people that he's helped. So find you somebody like that if you're really lost in that area, because some of the satisfaction that you're looking for will happen once you can identify that thing that you can be great at. And like Dre was saying earlier, the debate will always often continue on whether or not this person or that person is the greatest of all time. But there's usually not a whole lot of debate as to whether or not a person is great at something. So I'm saying be great. Don't just be average, because that could be frustrating. People forget average,
Mm,
but it's harder for people to forget great, you know.
yeah. But being average is where you start out at. Like, so a lot of people, you may not be great at something right off the bat. You might be below average. So, if you work hard enough, you want to get to average is used as a baseline for you to help measure your own abilities. So if you can look at it and, being, some people are jacks of all trades. And so, their goal is just to become average at a lot of different skills. So you might be average at finances, might be average at your social life, but you're well rounded. If you can be average in multiple areas, then I think. But I do feel like in order, when you want to start making some money, then you need to be exceptional or great at one of the you have to decide what your actual forte is going to be when it comes to whatever it is that you're doing.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. People don't start off, but typically people don't start off great. They move, they work towards that. Yeah.
Mm,
And we could probably think of a lot of artists, since we were talking about artists earlier, who would, if they were sitting on the platform with us, would say, hey, we didn't start here. You know, even somebody as great as, I know you didn't watch it, but one of the awards that Kendrick got was for his song Luther.
mm,
And I remember watching a documentary on Luther, and Luther didn't start off as the Luther we know.
right.
It took, it took some work for him to get there, to get above average,
Hmm.
you know. Yeah.
Being a backup singer, so it takes being in those positions of, really, sometimes you need to be average in order to get into the door for something. So maybe you want to be a singer, but you're an average dancer, so you're good enough at dancing to get to be a background singer, and then you could see the way things really work as singers as you working with them. And but that's part of how you play the game. You have to use your skills to your advantage in order to elevate or get to the next level, open up the doors that you didn't think were possible. So a lot of times, I wanted to do something music related for pretty long in my life. I would say probably since like late high school, I wanted to do something. But I picked technology to kind of use to get into music. And so I just kind of, you know, used my skills that I learned where I would say I'm above average for most people who know technology because most people don't, actually take the time to look at that. So I used that skill in order to and tied it into, you know, the love I have for music and, different things like that. So yeah, you just got to get creative. A lot of times we think that or a lot of times what you actually want to do might not even be something that exists yet. So it's like you have to create it from scratch completely. And I think so many people get hooked or zoned in thinking that there's a name for the position that they're actually destined for, when it might be your own business. There might be a position that does exactly what you want to do at a specific company, but you would never know if never maybe got into a corporate position, or you never were in a region of the country where that's something that's possible, or maybe you wanted to be a lifeguard your whole life and you live in the Midwest, and so you wanted to be one on the beach. So just things like that. Like, you in life, you have to really be creative if you want to be above average. So yeah, doing the bare minimum will get you to be average, but adding creativity will then start to make you above average.
But you raised a good point, because when you talked about that person who might be interested in singing, but actually is a better dancer than singer, and that dancing ability gets them through the door. I can think of I can think of quite a few multi-platinum singing artists who, when you think about the standards of music and sound and voice, some of these people are not the voice, but they have managed to sell a lot of albums, maybe because of some other ancillary skills that they were able to hone to get them in the door, and they figured out how to stay there. So there's something to say about that. I think that if one concentrates on building a suit of skills and sharpening them, even to the point that you're making, Dre, you're sharpening your tech skills, and that by doing that, it's opened up so many doors in terms of the arena of music for you. So sometimes you can get to something indirectly. But then there's another thing I wanted to say, and that is that once you get through the door, one of the mistakes that sometimes people make is becoming a legend in their own mind. And so when I think about people who have consistently been in the GOAT conversation, and in sports, it's an easy one, Michael Jordan. So Michael Jordan is famous for not resting on his laurels. And so there are people who just a few years ago, we're talking sports for a minute, were on the top of the heap. And now, because of, I don't know, maybe some delusion on their part, or them not recognizing what was necessary to stay at the top, now people are hardly talking about them at all. So the point I want to make there is that once you get through the door, you have to keep sharpening your knife. You have to keep polishing, or else you're gonna, even if you get to great, you can easily be bumped down to average, especially in the arena of technology, because things are happening so quickly and changing so quickly. You have to continue to work at it.
Yeah. And all that comes down to focus. So, we were talking about sports. There's a lot of kids growing up who are talented in many different sports. They're good at football, basketball, baseball, and it really comes down to whichever one they might love basketball, but there's more opportunities to, make better money in baseball, or, they have a better frame for football or something, so there's just different things. But I mean, a lot of times that student, or that person can overcome those obstacles if they really did want to play basketball, but it might that might not be the one that will get you the scholarship. Maybe football is the your skill set is, D1 schools want you for football and only D2 schools want you for basketball, or other way around. You getting D1 offers for baseball, but you really want to play football and you're only getting D3 scholarships. So that focus on, you're gonna have to make decisions on what you're gonna spend your time on and what you're gonna focus on, and more going to be that's going to be the more important thing when it comes to making your actual decision on what skills or what interests you need to pursue moving forward.
What you just said takes me to the next point. In the last episode when we had the executive functioning coach Marsha Murray on, we were talking about the importance of getting proper rest. But what I want to say is that it's important to get rest, but resist oversleeping. There's a saying, the early bird gets the worm. And, last time we were talking about one of the habits that you developed, Dre, of getting up early. And now, sure enough, if a person is really grinding, they might have a morning where they decide to sleep in. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a person who, a working person, or maybe somebody even in school. You're saying that you want to achieve this next thing, but we all have 24 hours in a day. And if you spend X amount of time at work or at school or at work and school, and you are oversleeping, then some of the time that you could have spent clutching your pillow, you could have been writing, because, back in the day, now I know things are different now. Back in the day, if you were a rapper, you also wrote your rhymes. I mean, that's for the most part, that's how it started. Now I
Mm.
know it's very different now. And so you do have to dedicate some time to that. And if you don't, it's not going to get done. And usually for people who are just starting out, you don't have anybody to write your rhymes for you anyway. And so there are people who have been talking about writing a book for the longest. You have to figure out the time. And usually that time is going to come by getting out of bed a little earlier and focusing and dedicating some time to actually putting, well, I was going to say pen to paper, but most people are, going directly to
Computer.
typing it. And now you could speak tech, you could speak
Mm-hmm.
it into the into the computer. So it's a lot easier to get a book done now
A lot
than it
easier.
was years ago.
Mm-hmm. Actually, speaking to that, there's I was just watching a video today about scheduling out your if you have many interests, it's about scheduling out what you want to do based off of your energy level, not necessarily just time. So if you are trying to write a book or um, try to rap, it would be ideal to pick a time in the day when you have high energy to do that specific task. So whether that's in the morning when you have the most energy, but a lot of people will wait until after their day. That's the same reason why I think it's better to work out in the morning as opposed to later in the day, because you don't really have any excuses. So many things can happen during the day that could throw you off on getting the work that you need done. So, but it was saying, do your high tasks. So the example they used was if you were trying to make music, learn a new language, and practice drawing or something. You could do split it up into weeks. So week one, you're working on drawing and you're working on music. Week two, you're working on music and you're working on I forgot the other thing I said. um, I said music, writing, yeah. And then the third week you can just rotate them in like that, and that way your morning can be dedicated to one of those tasks each day, and you're constantly improving in all of those areas. Because once you the thing about mastery or any skill is that if you're honing in on one skill, you're at the same time honing in on other skills that you practice diligently as well, because it's more of a mental thing. So like if you go shoot basketball, shooting your free throws, the calmness that you need to have in your mind might help you with your golf swing at the same time. So there's overlapping skills that if with dedicated focus, they say 2 hours of focused work is better than 8 hours of unfocused work. So
That's good.
try to
That's
dedicate
good.
some time to doing the things that you want to see improvements on in your life. And I would say, even if it's something like reading, anything that you can improve on and take some time to get better will make you better as a person overall.
And the other thing I wanted to share that I think ties into what you were saying is it's important to take notes. I think, and I've talked about this before, for some people, especially men, there is this idea that um, I'm going to keep it all here. And there are some people that can do that, but that's not most people. And most people actually need to put it down somewhere, or else you forget. And if you get the opportunity, like at some point, Dre will probably share some of the really cool people that he's had an opportunity to engage with in the music industry. But it would be foolhardy for him to be in that environment with people who are further along in the industry and not, even if you're not taking those notes at the right at that moment, at some point, even when you get back to the house or when you get in the Uber, you have to take the time to make those notes because there are things that you're going to forget and you're going to be sorry that you forgot them because that's the difference between you and the next person sometimes. Because one of the things that I know, I'm going to use another artist as an example, Usher. Usher is a student of the game. He does his homework, and that's why Usher was one of the artists that headlined the Super Bowl a few years ago. And just imagine you've got one event that happens once a year. You've got thousands and thousands of artists. And so, being a student of the game, he positioned himself to be one of those few people to be invited to headline the Super Bowl. And so take take notes, be a student of whatever that game is that you're in. And then right in that same vein that Dre was talking about, you have to invest in your own personal growth. And so again, when I was talking about Michael Jordan, one of the things, or Kobe might be even a better example when we talk about this. Kobe was never satisfied. He was always looking to grow. And when we talk about growth, growth is not just in one area. So we've been primarily talking about vocation, but maybe the area that you and I might need to grow in has to do with how we relate to our family members, or maybe you're not where you need to be on a health tip. You know, you are 30 pounds above your playing weight, whatever it was that you played, or maybe you were the dancer. And so, what are you going to do to get to your best in that particular area? It's not just going to happen on its own. You're going to have to take you're going to have to take some progressive steps in order to get there. Whether it be, you know, YouTube, because again, it's not like back in the days where you had to go to the library, you have to order it. You can just pick up your phone and tap in. But some part of the reason why we do this is to provide a cheat code for people. You know, I didn't have this when I was coming of age. You can just go on YouTube and have somebody give you the cheat code. Take me, hours to read and study to get the cheat code. It's different. And then even with that, some people would rather just watch people goof off. And I'm not saying that entertainment is bad and watching people just do goofy stuff. You sit there and watch somebody eat uh, 12 plates of lasagna, and then you watching that stuff, and this person's getting paid. And I personally know somebody that got paid for doing those kind of videos. People do get paid for that stuff. So you're watching them get paid, but then what are you doing for your own self to move forward?
And real quick, what a lot of people don't realize is that that's a pretty short payday as well. So it's like we've been seeing people get paid to do a lot of things, and it's like that we've seen it run out as well. So it's like the people who were getting paid to have the mukbangs and just eat a whole couple buckets of chicken. It's like people get tired of watching that after a while, and so you could end up in chasing something that may get you one decent payday, but then after a while, now you're just damaging your health for a couple of pennies here and there. Cause so there's a lot of other things that you should probably be doing. But I mean, that's just something social media altogether. I think a lot of people have now seen the rise and falls of some of these people on these platforms, and we've seen a lot of creators get burnt out from the content that they have to create. So it's like, when you first started, you were getting a couple of $1,000s a month, and now you're doing the same stuff, but now not as many people are engaging or watching as they used to. So now you're trying to be a little bit more extreme to get the eyes back. So I feel like we've have enough time. I don't even know when TikTok started officially, but we've seen enough people go to the peaks of TikTok fame and fall off completely. And it's really what are you how did you plan to take advantage of that fame? Was that the only platform that you were building on, and once TikTok was about to leave, then you didn't have anything else, or did you create your own brand that could survive past one of these platforms? So that's a big thing that people don't think, or I think more people are starting to see, especially the youth. They're seeing some of their favorite creators, people who they've been watching for years, just become less relevant, and it's less relevant to them as well. So they're like, well, maybe that isn't the best route to go. They were like, oh yeah, I wanted to be a YouTuber. Now we've seen so many YouTubers rise and fall. The one people who had the fake relationships on YouTube, and just to get the young audience and stuff. It's like people can see through a little bit more of the facade now, and that just took
You know,
time.
and not to cut you off, Dre.
Uh-huh.
In many ways, it was providential that we chose our very first episodes on the topic of consistency,
Mm-hmm.
because one of the things that I appreciate about us, flaws and all, is that we haven't tried to be somebody else, and we haven't gone to these extremes in order to gain an audience. This has been about a conversation that we hope that will spur people on to be their best, whatever that is, provide some information, help people to avoid pitfalls, provide a cheat code. Um, and that consistency has allowed us to do this for over 2 years, and moving forward with what we're doing. But the one thing that you said that's really important that a lot of people don't understand, and it bears repeating, that those people who are really successful monetarily with being an online influencer, they are doing it constantly. And that's the thing that people don't understand, who fantasize about, this quick hit and all that kind of stuff. Because one of one of my favorite influencers admitted it, that he took a break
Mm.
because it was just constantly posting, constantly posting. It's work.
It's a lot of
Okay.
work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It's more
You
work.
have to be, yeah, you have to be cut out to do it. So you have to decide whether, at what level you want to do it. And if you decide that you want to do it and make it your job, just know it's not you just sitting in front of the computer once a week. If you're saying you're trying to pay your rent doing this, most of
Yeah.
those people are getting it.
It's more work to be a content creator than it is to have a job. I can tell you that. Not even necessarily from experience, but just seeing what it takes on a weekly basis just to, do what we do. It's already a lot, and we not getting no money from it. So it's just like once you start getting money, then the demand for it increases, the amount of time you have to for preparation increases, and it's volatile because you don't know, you can go down on one platform and lose half of your audience. So there's just a lot of struggles, and I think the same thing happened with rap. Same thing that's happening with content creators. The same thing that happened with rappers. After a while, it gets hard to come out with new songs. It's like they pour their heart into one of the songs, and the song doesn't even get heard by 100,000 people. So now they starting back at square one, and now they got to think of a whole new idea to create and give to people. So it takes a lot of mental brain work to do that, and it's owning your own business. That when you're not really selling a product, that means that you have to really give unique ideas every week in, week out, day after day, in a lot of cases. So people have to release multiple videos a day, and recording yourself, like you see the finished product because they've gone through 100 takes of them messing up. And so then they're not gonna show all of their bloopers, but it's you might think that it's something. Oh, it only takes 5 minutes. In reality, that 30-second clip might have taken them an hour and a half to get perfected, and then you add on editing, post process. Like there's a lot that goes into all of it, and that's why most podcasts don't make it past. They say episode it's like either 3 or 5, something like that. So it takes something that's why you have to really have a passion about whatever it is that you're talking about or whatever it is you're doing, because if you're average, you just gonna you gonna make it to 5 episodes, and that's it, because it's just too. That's the average amount of time most people do. So once you push past that, then you're automatically above average, and that's how we've been able to stay consistent. It's like we've been way past average for a while, because most people don't have close to as many podcasts or sit downs that we've had. So we can hang our hats on being in the top percentage of people who was able to continue certain things. So that's the type of information. That's how I look at things to keep myself going, and make sure that I got the energy to do certain things like this. But you got to find your own internal motivators, and you can use some external motivation here and there, but the internal is going to last so much longer.
You said something that for a lot of people, when you made that statement, they blanked out. So when you said that, yeah, we're doing this and we're not getting paid, for some people, they blanked out they checked out when you said that, because for, for those folks, that is their motivation for everything. And if they can't see a way to get paid monetarily, they don't have an interest. They don't have an interest unless they can get paid right off the rip. And in today's world, that's possible, but taking that approach tends not to be as lasting or fulfilling, because if that's your approach and your bag and what you need to do to get your bag, that statement takes me into my last point. And believe it or not, we're almost done. And we touched on these. You go back and watch this for those people who are going to watch it for the first time. You might have to watch it again to really catch all the points, but the points were there. Uh, told you to seek to be your best self, number one. Number two, rest, but don't oversleep. Take charge of your personal growth, and then and take notes. The last point is pay it forward, because that's all Dre and I have been doing for the past 2 years. That's what he was saying when he said we're not getting paid. Well, we're developing social equity, and we're not fools. We are going to get paid, but our motive for doing this was not to get paid. But we understand that how this works is you pay it forward and you will get paid. I know a lady who had been working and sharing and teaching for years and just grinding, getting it out of the mud. And recently, one of her mentors gave her organization a jet
Mm.
airplane. And so she and her people went from flying commercial to having their own jet, and they're working on some amazing things now because of what they positioned themselves to have come to them on the back end. And if you're one of those people who always have your hand out and it's always just about you and your tribe, it can be a challenge when you actually can't do the work yourself. In other words, part of what what's great about paying it forward is that at some point we all end up in a position where we can't actually get it done ourselves. You want to have enough social equity, you want to have enough uh, deposits in the universe so that people are more than happy to step in and support you. And some of the people who are watching who are struggling right now, it's because you, I don't know how else to put it, you've been selfish. And so now, because of that selfishness, you're wondering, like, wow, man, nobody wants to, I did this and I did that. And you may even be saying that maybe you white out or grayed out like me, and you're saying you've got all these expectations for your children. But one of the things I've said on this platform before, yeah, children, our children should honor us. But when I talk about pay it forward, actually, I'm talking about getting beyond your tribe, beyond your household, because in my opinion, we are obligated to take care of our house, take care of our children. You're not really paying it forward according to the definition that I'm propagating until you get out of your house, because if you're a parent, you're supposed to take care of your house. But once you're doing something to take care of people beyond your house, that's my definition of pay it forward. So maybe even if you feel that you got all that other stuff handled, maybe rich young ruler, your objective is to now pay it forward, find a way to help somebody in a way that doesn't necessarily help you immediately.
And just my last point with that is I think of it like physics. They say in physics every action has a equal and opposite reaction, and energy is never created nor destroyed. So that's how I can perpetually just do things where I'm not seeing immediate returns from, because I know none of the energy that I put into anything that I do is ever lost. It may not come back instantaneous, but I do know that it will come back to me at some point in my life. So you can say that, so you could say I'm still doing it for, myself, but I'm just doing, things that I feel need to be done, and eventually I do have faith that, everything will pay off. The Lord will bless us for, the work that we've put in and continue to put in. And I don't worry about when I'll see those payoffs. Right now everything in my life is, handled and taken care of. So, I can't even complain. With the extra time that I have, I try to put it into things that I care about, and hope that it helps, finds the people who it needs the help. That's what we do it for. So
And the payoff may look different from how you made the deposit. That's why I shared the example of the jet,
hmm,
because this person didn't uh, didn't give somebody else a jet, and now a jet was coming back
exactly.
because this person didn't have a jet to give. This
Hmm.
person got a jet because the universe said, okay, for all that you did, we want you to have this to help further what you're doing. Or maybe, you know, there's a person who's listening to this and you got a passion for youth. Maybe because you've been giving and sewing into the Boys and Girls Club or the YMCA, maybe somebody's going to gift you with a building so you can do your own. That's how that that's how that works. You don't know exactly how it's going to come. You just know it's going to come.
Mm. So, I think that's a good place for us to call it for today. I think we've been trying to keep them shorter, but today was a good conversation. So nothing wrong with us going back. We still didn't hit like an hour and a half like we used to. So we're trying.
The old days, right?
We're trying to keep them down to digestible time segments. But we got a good topic. We'll go over a little bit. So yeah, thank everybody for tuning in and watching. We appreciate it. We hope that you find some value from our conversations. Please participate in the conversation in the comments. Please like and subscribe as well. Any last words, Frank?
Share, like, subscribe,
Share.
share,
Mm-hmm.
share.
Yeah, and
That's
also real
very
quick,
important.
everybody, it was Frank's birthday. Happy belated to Frank. So we both in the Aquarius gang right here. So he just celebrated his birthday. I have my birthday last month. So both our birthdays are out of the way. We got straight work for the rest of the year. We gonna continue to come with the information and the conversations. So yes, everyone, thank you so much, and we will see you guys next time.